Good morning, everyone.
Morning, Karen. Morning, Karen.
Thank you. It's my privilege and pleasure to welcome Gloria Hyatt MBE this morning. First of all, we need to do the bits that are very important, our objectives this morning. And you're going to be exploring with Gloria the complex issues which impact on education and develop an increased understanding of community involvement in schools, the outcome of which should be enhanced understanding of the pressures placed on schools and evidence of strategies and practice being used in schools. Your tomorrow's head's competencies are conceptual thinking, inspiring others, and integrity. No pressure, Gloria. Okay, so Gloria is going to present this morning on working with the community, but I thought I'd start with a very short pen portrait. In 1998, the Elimu Academy in Liverpool became a successful school for predominantly black secondary school pupils and made a huge statement schooling pupils who were excluded, faced exclusion, or were high achievers. Gloria, the former head teacher of the Academy, is the director and education consultant for Teach Consultancy, an education, training and recruitment resource. As head teacher for the Academy, Gloria made history. She successfully transformed the Academy into an independent school, providing an extended after-school service. Elimu employed 25 staff members from black and minority ethnic communities and delivered courses for adult learners to give classroom-assisted learning. But it took 5 years before the education and local authority would fund and recognise it as an independent school. For her achievements in 2003, Gloria was awarded a Member of the British Empire for services to education, and later in the same year she was given a Merseyside Woman of the Year award. Reflecting on her 8 years as head teacher, she says, "That was a period in my life that I thoroughly enjoyed. I gained a lot seeing people achieve. When I got an MBE in 2003 for services and education, it wasn't about me, but it was a testament of the work and staff. It was about all of our contributions." Please welcome Gloria Hyatt.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen, for that introduction. And it's a delight to be amongst my peers here. I hope I can raise to the standard, and I hope you can all hear me at the back. Excellent. I was going to say nod your head, but you've done it already. On my travels here from Liverpool, I thought it was really interesting that I was able to discover that we're in a great place here in Loughborough, because you mightn't have known this, but they have got one of the few awards awarded by the London Organising Committee, the Inspire Award for involving communities. They didn't do much. They involved 100 young leaders, 250 schools and 1 college to accomplish that. And I think that's a great standard to achieve. And it's a great way to start our conversation today, the journey that I hope we'll go through in the next 45 minutes to understand the complexities of involving communities. I don't want to put myself here as an expert, but I do want to say I know a little bit about something. So hopefully you'll learn something from me. But I'd like to start by asking you to put your hand up if you think you know almost everything you need to know about involving communities. Be brave. Okay? Put your hands up if you think you know a little bit about involving communities. Okay? Put your hands up if you think you don't know very much at all. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that honesty. The reason I asked you that question was not because I'm very teacherish and I like to see people putting their hands up or asking lots of questions. It's because I want to understand where you're coming from and let you know that I'm here today to serve you, to give you information that will help you on your journey. You're very, very fortunate, as I said to our two colleagues here today, to be in this position, to be able to experiment and to learn from people who've already done it before. Because I can tell you, when I first started this journey in the early 90s, I didn't know much about nothing. And it was trial and error. And boy, did I make some mistakes. But some very kind people let me away with this. Okay. As they say, you shouldn't talk to strangers. So what I want to do now is give you a little bit more about me. I was very embarrassed about those things you said, but we'll talk about that later. To help you understand why I might be qualified to tell you a little bit about including communities and what my experience is. What I hope you'll do is, through this conversation, engage in the conversation with me. Go through the slides if you can't see there and there. And please do ask the questions. Don't be shy. It's interactive. Okay. As you can see, I was a former head teacher, but as you would imagine, I didn't begin like that. I started off with a bit of an inspiration, and that was I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't come from a community of teachers, nor did I know what I was quite letting myself in for. I was just inspired because there was many people who were teachers and actually managed to engage with me on a level that made me think, that's a great job. I wasn't your usual type of teacher because, by any definition, I was a looked-after child. And for most of those children, as we know in our school, they don't even achieve 5 GCSEs. So to go beyond that, in those days, in that time, was a little bit of an accomplishment. But of course, I didn't know that. I was just doing what I thought was normal. I then got my qualification, and believe me, I wasn't an easy student, as you'll get to learn. I asked too many questions, and sometimes the wrong ones, but nonetheless, they let me into the teaching profession. I began my teaching life in a place that's become notorious for not the best reasons. Of course, there's great things to say about Huyton, but anybody who reads the news knows that Huyton is a place where one of the most heinous crimes was committed against another black young man, a very talented black young man, Anthony Walker. That's where I began my teaching life. And I had a fantastic teaching career there, and they treated me really well. So much so I was inspired to make a change and a difference. So I did something that you think, that's a bit crazy. I left a secure teaching post with the pension. Remember, that's what we're all here for. And I went and took a job with a 6-month contract. And the contract quite clearly said, your job is to engage the communities and increase learning amongst the young people who were underachieving. And you've got 6 months to do it. And by the way, there's no money at the end of it. I thought, I can do that. And so fortunately, I had a plan, like all good leaders, and it was called a business plan. And I had a belief, and I had a vision, and I had a purpose, and I had milestones, and all those things I know you've already been spoken to about in order to realise it. And for 5 years, I knocked on many doors. For 5 years, I talked to many people. And for 5 years, some people were convinced, and some people thought, she doesn't know what she's talking about. Most importantly, the Director of Education in Liverpool was one of them. He closed the door and said, Gloria, I don't know what this independent school is you're trying to tell me about. I don't understand this. And guess what? I'm not giving you any money. So I had a little bit of a challenge. But I'm not one that's easily put off, like all good leaders. And so I decided my plan will work because it has a clear strategy. So what I did, which made it unique in those times, and I know this is not the case any longer, but in those times, in the early 90s, I said, right, as an act of defiance, because I can be, we'll set up a charity. And so we set up a charity, and it started off simply as an after school. It became an extended school through the charitable arm. And then we set up a company because guess what? If you want to raise money through education in those times. You needed to become a company and generate sponsorship and funding. I might be speaking a foreign language to some of you at the moment, but I hope by the end of this session you will begin to understand a little bit more about what I'm saying. And certainly when you take time to read some of the materials that I've put at the back of the slides, you'll get a better understanding. That's your homework. And so, for 5 years, we pretty much sustained ourselves. We set up a project for children who were excluded from schools, because like many schools across the country, Liverpool was not parting with its money when they were excluding children. So we decided, well, we'll get the money elsewhere. And fortunately, lots of charitable organisations donated to us. Eventually, after 5 years, Liverpool began to take notice. And so we were awarded a local authority grant. And, of course, with more money and more resources, you're better positioned to prove yourself. So then we decided to go for independent school status. And typical of me, we worked within the rules without breaking them, but without sticking rigidly to them. I would like to break the rule and walk across here, but I've been told that I'm not allowed to walk too far. So it's really hard for me to stay still. But I'm going to stick with that rule today. But in setting up the school, we didn't stick within the rules. And one of them was, we set up an independent school. Anyone who's run an independent school knows it's fee charging. We didn't charge fees. So it was unique. But we did get inspected. We did pass the inspection. We did meet all the standards and had set up the school to get approval. I think this other point is quite important. What we didn't do is just educate black children. What we educated was children from that community, and they were black and white. But the point I make here is sometimes if you've got 10 children in a class, you've got a black school. That's a small but important point. Eventually, the school became so successful it was mainstreamed. And because of that success, the local authority took on the school. And I decided it was timely for me to set up my own company. So I learnt many things. What I'll do as we go through this, I will tell you all about the things that I did, and hopefully you'll engage in a conversation with me. I was then appointed by the Deputy Prime Minister's office, run by our friend John, and at the time. And I walked all around the country, meeting very important people, young people, adults, head teachers, local authorities, to look at how do we engage communities. I was called a neighbourhood renewal advisor. That was a grand title. And I had many great experiences that I will share with you as we go through this. And then I also got appointed by the Secretary of State for, I don't know whether I should say the word, but this is our professional body, the General Teaching Council for England. And so I was able to work across the country. I know not all of us love it. And then I went on and got various awards, of which just basically says that our profession should be respected. I always say that awards are great, but never get too carried away with yourself. I think it's all about you. Nothing much is done on your own. I'm sure you'll agree. Okay, less of me and more of you now. Today, what I want you to do is, first of all, have a look at that picture. If you can't see it there, have a look on your slides. And I'm going to ask a question so we can have a microphone for people who want to answer. What's the first thing that pops out in your head? What do you see in the picture? Okay.
Reflection of a child.
Okay, a reflection of the child. Anybody else? Any other offers? Thank you.
A question mark.
A question mark. Anything else? Thank you.
Looking for answers.
Looking for answers. Great, fantastic. Any more offers? Numbers. Okay, we can see numbers. Thank you. No identity. Fantastic. A blurred vision. Okay, so we'll end with that. And what I want you to learn from that is the rules of engagement is that we're all coming here with different experiences. We all see different things, and that's what including communities is largely about. Please don't be afraid and think that there are no rules. Of course there are. But remember that we all have different levels of engagement in this, and we will all have different things to say. So we can start off by just respecting that everybody's going to have different opinions. And indeed, you might disagree with something I say, and I welcome you in doing that. Okay? I would just want to make this first statement. Do you realise that communities are evolving and changing at such a pace that we, leaders in education, need to engage differently with communities? If you agree, wave your hand. You're so kind. If you disagree, stamp your feet. Oh, nobody's brave. Thank you for agreeing with me. I don't mind at all if you disagree. What I'm going to do now is walk you through some of the experiences, and you will either continue to agree with this statement I've made, or you'll change your mind. Feel free to do that. Okay. As Karen rightly said, I'm not going to bore you too much with the fine detail, but they're the things that I've aspired to. 1 to 4. Those 4 things I plan to tell you about in terms of making sure that we really do understand what community involvement is. It means different things to different people. What constitutes good leadership practice? Because there is leadership practice that's very poor. I can tell you lots of stories, but I'll tell you the good stuff. And then also how we use it through the curriculum, teaching and learning, really, really important. And the school ethos, and people get very confused about what that means. And then you will obviously get some practical measures that you can go away with today and start doing when you get back to school. Is it next week? Okay, next week. So if I don't make it, please tell me. Okay. They're the people that we're supposed to engage. Having looked at that now, anybody surprised? Did you all know that already? Okay. For those of you who've all said yes, I didn't see anybody disagreeing, because remember, if you disagree, to stamp your feet. Okay? For those of you who've agreed, could you please help me out here and just pick one of those bullet points to demonstrate how your school engages with the community, so your colleagues can hear an example. Okay, we've got somebody here.
So many choices. Our school is an international. We've just got the International School Award 3 years ago. We're going through the process again. So we're looking at the global community. We have lots of connections with schools in China, South Africa. We've had the what are they called? The leadership qualifications, Junior Sports Leadership Awards.
Fantastic.
So we've had our kids becoming leaders, going out and teaching their peers in South Africa how to be leaders, and they've taken it a step further.
Wow.
And have gone out into their local communities, and now they've kind of almost taken that programme and improved it, and so they have a new selection process, and they've been teaching our students, and now we have the same thing. So kind of mutually beneficial leadership relationship between kids in South Africa and kids at home in England.
Thank you so much for that example. You've saved me a lot of work. I can go home now. There's an excellent example of engaging communities and covering all of those points. A point well made, that community is not engaging back in the old days, the good old days. Some of us are a little bit older, and I have to say I'm blessed with this thing called melanin, which makes you a bit younger. And you lose the lines. Some people use oil of Ulay, melanin. Okay. And what I would say to you is that, on a serious note, that when we're engaging communities, not like in the old days, where the community began and ended a couple of miles down the road, and that's all we were concerned about. The community reach is national, if you're doing a good job. The community reach is international. It is global, the new word for international, I believe. We know what we mean by global, don't we? Excellent. And, of course, our most hallowed Department for Children, Schools and Families said, so of course we believe it. Okay, how do we make that come alive? Okay. Does anybody want to challenge that statement? Does anyone not believe that it's about schools, it's about communities, it's about a stable, caring, welcoming environment, and ultimately our outcome is that children thrive? Does anybody not believe that? Okay. If you're not sure and you're not confident or you're too scared to tell me no, please remember this, that every research document that you search under communities, that all the important people in our profession, be it Ofsted, be it the General Teaching Council, all said this, okay? Robert Blum is an American, but in our own country, we are saying the same thing too. Something else that you mightn't realise, and you might think, oh, I'm just here to learn about communities today, nothing much. I'll tell you how important it is. And again, this is cited in all the documentation, in all the strategy, in all the policy, and in all the practice that we're told is good. It is because it helps young people to achieve beyond what might be your expectation, because remember, not all of us expect the best for our children, though we should. And so it can make the difference from a child achieving a C and a B, or a B and an A. It can make the difference between the SATs results. And that's why this is such an important thing. Does anybody not believe? You're ever so kind to me. You're ever so kind.
Just raise a question. I've worked within community cohesion within my school.
Yes.
I think and I think getting myself to believe was never a problem. I think now getting the SLT to really engage with it has been really, really difficult. I'm just wondering if there's anything you can do or you can say that maybe will help.
Okay. Absolutely see your point, that in order to get your team to engage in the belief system, because this is very much about beliefs, and thank you for that really good question. What I'm going to do is walk you through how we do it and give you some good answers. But to give you a quick answer in case you're impatient like I am, what I would say is that you lead by example. Anybody who's a leader knows that you don't tell people what to do, you do it. If you lead by example, sometimes words are not required because people follow the leader. We love following the leader in England because we love queues. Okay, so hopefully that helps you, but I'm going to walk through, and if I don't give you enough information, please ask me. Okay. So, what I'm going to do now is give you some examples of how we as leaders develop and work with the different people in our school to make sure that we do include communities in the best way possible. The first thing is to get rid of our bias. Put your hands up if you've got a bias. Okay, stamp your feet if you haven't. Right answer. Okay. Most of us do have a bias, if not by conditioning, by choice. And so because of that, as educators, we have to work on that bias. And if I can give you some examples for you to go away and look at, or just to stimulate your thinking for your own practice in the future. We all know about the 7/7 bombings. And I was called by the Home Office and the Deputy Prime Minister's office to go and work in Bradford with schools there in that communities. And what was clearly happening there was divides. I would call it apartheid in England. We had white communities there, and we had Asian communities there, and we had the BNP in the middle, and we had people that were called terrorists on the other side. Okay. And my job was to go in there and somehow, some way, get them to engage in the idea of community regeneration. The only reason I exist as a teacher is to increase the capability and the ability of our young people. If I don't do that, I failed in class and I've got to leave. And that was my job. So what we were able to do was to get rid of the bias and the myths, because believe it or not, some of the white children thought that all Asian children were terrorists. Would you believe that? Where did they get that from? Some Asian children thought that all white children were not very nice. They didn't go to the mosque. They didn't say the prayers. They weren't very nice. Would you believe that? And so it was those kind of myths that you can understand that might have some truth that we had to undo. There were also teachers like you, like me, who believed these things also, because they'd never crossed the road to go into the other school to see if it was really true. So what we did is we worked with the local authority and those schools on a project, and take the name, called Building Bridges. Building Bridges was one of the best things that happened, I would say, to Bradford, but of course I would. To help them engage with each other, to form partnerships not just through the schools, because remember, the school is not the community. So it was working with the police. Why would we work with the police in schools? Well, I'll tell you. Because if the police think that all Asian people are terrorists, then you're going to have lots of arrests. And from that comes lots of different challenges for families. If all white people think that Asian people are taking all our houses, somebody gets upset and there might be violence. And you might think, well, that's not very clever. Well, let me tell you, I met a highly educated man. He had a PhD and he was a counsellor, a ward counsellor. And he used to sit in the local authority and say all about his bias. And it doesn't matter how much I talked to him and how much humour I gave him, he refused to change his bias. And there are people like that existing in our school communities every day. So it was important that we worked with all the agencies to try and change those who were willing to change, because we've got to remember the challenge is that not everybody's willing to change. And so my solution is take those with you who are, and the others might follow begrudgingly, or they may stay there. But what tends to happen is the majority outweighs the minority. And so we would work with the police to go into schools to inform children about community safety. And we'd get the two groups of children together. There's basic things. We do programmes about citizenship and identity, because believe it or not, the white children didn't know what Britishness is. Does anybody know what it is? I know, it's a big question, isn't it?
I was going to say, come in second.
Brilliant. Fantastic answer. And that's how some of the young people felt. Now, if a young person feels as if I'm always second best and I'm not good enough, are they going to achieve great sats? No. They're not going to get the A to C's, not because they're not intelligent, they're not motivated. So we did all kinds of motivational programmes with them. So basically, I'm not going to go on too long because I know that I haven't got that length of time, but what I will say is please do check out Bridging Divides for some ideas for your own school programmes to overcome bias. The next thing what we needed to do is look at teaching and learning and the different styles. And so I was fortunate enough to be asked to go to work with Ealing local authority. And their challenge was that some communities, not all of them, were not achieving the A to C's in terms of the benchmark given nationally. And so my job was to go and have a little look and have a little investigation and see what's going on there. And what I came up with was something very simple, that they didn't know what the meaning of partnership was. They didn't know about working together. It was all very insular. This is my school, and this is what I do, and that's my school, and this is what I do. And nobody was really working together. They had a massive, fantastic infrastructure. And importantly, they had a brilliant third sector. So I said, look, schools, first of all, you can get things for free. Free is good, isn't it? So you can get some learning done. So what happened was a project called the Nurture Project. If you want to know more about that, look it up. It is on the site. And that project was about working with teachers, working with leaders like yourself, to help them understand, how do we do partnerships? Again, it was like a foreign language to them. They didn't know that. Actually, you can do partnerships outside of the school, not the traditional normal ones, like bringing grandma into school to talk to the children about a hidden history, because there was fabulous histories in those communities, and it saved the teacher a lesson plan and a bit of planning and time. You had that session off, and you learned something yourself, and then it's something for you to build on. You also had people coming in from the different communities and showing and giving information to the teachers so that they can be better practitioners. And the reason I say this is important is we can only live in the world we come from. If we come from a very middle-class, privileged world, how on earth can you expect to empathise and understand a child who does not come from that experience, who might be coming to you with no breakfast because their mother hasn't got the money? That's reality for some people, or she spent it on something maybe she ought not. That's the reality of Britain today, and that's the teaching environment that you have. And so they're the things that we did in those schools. It was a massive partnership exercise, but again, I haven't got the time to go through it all, but the Nurture Project is something you might want to consider. In terms of the third thing, effective communications, what did I do? Let me use Elimu as an experience. I learned 4 foreign languages. First of all, in order for Elimu to become a reality, to change a child, and we're talking, and I'll explain the level. I had children who had multiple exclusions from infants. So you can imagine the type of child I had. Think about that naughty child that you didn't want to come to school to meet, times 30. Okay? That's the child I had. But what we did is we taught them differently, so that they became the child that everybody wanted. They were reintegrated back. There was lots of success stories, and I'm not going to tell you a lie. There was some very unsuccessful stories. But we managed to change because we learned the language, the 4 foreign languages. How did I do that? First of all, I had to learn the language of the private sector by setting up a company limited by guarantee, which is not a massive achievement now, but in the early 90s it was. Most academies are doing it. We were doing it first in Liverpool. You copied us. And we had to learn to understand, what does the private sector want? OK, I'll give you an example. I'm from a great place called Liverpool, and there are 2 great football clubs. I supported them both. And they both give us money. Sponsored our playground, gave us kits. We also spoke to McDonald's because, guess what? The children like McDonald's. And so they got the opportunity to eat McDonald's once a week as a treat. I agree. Of course I would. I'm a PE teacher, ex-PE teacher. So, of course, we wanted healthy living. So we didn't give it to them every day of the week. I spoke to other restaurants and they donated food. So the children could get to experience lots of different ways to eat. And everybody knows there's nothing better than sitting around the table with your peers and eating. Everybody loves to do it. You learn a lot. That was the private sector. I had to learn the language of the private sector, otherwise I would never get a penny off them. Then I had to learn the language of the charitable sector, especially when the local authority wouldn't give us money. So I had to learn, how do I tell them what I mean by the national curriculum? Because I knew the language of education already. So it was learning how to tell the charitable sector, this is what we need, how to measure the outcomes. I'm going to have 250 children increase their attainment from grade D to C. And it was translating it into a charitable language. So you do funding bids. Anybody done any funding bids here? Okay, we've got one or two. Fantastic. They're the kind of things that, believe me, I see is going to start happening in the school sector. Because the more the cuts are cutting into our budgets, the more we're going to have to be proactive as leaders to do the good stuff that we ought to be doing. I also had to learn the language of the communities. Now, that was the biggest challenge, especially in my community, because they didn't all speak Scouse like me. And so, for instance, when I had to talk to a Somali member, and those who know the Somali communities will know this, that sometimes they don't speak to women. And they really didn't take me serious, even though I had this little badge that said head teacher. And so I had to learn the language to engage them, to embrace them. I had to change my whole leadership style and step down a bit. I didn't need to be powerful. I didn't need to be in charge. And that's the kind of language that you need to get so that you can embrace the change. They're the things that I did. And finally, another example, if I can stay with Liverpool, if you don't mind. Commitment to diversity. I'm not going to name the school, it'd be very unfair. But I can tell you that I watched a school and was part of it change when this school was a high achieving school. And then the pupil population changed dramatically. And it went from being a school in an urban community serving pupils who lived in that urban community to a school that served a large majority of inner city children. And the school went from highly successful by all the measures we know, Ofsted, Sutton, all that, to nearly a failing school. It didn't quite get there. And the reason why is because we had the same staff who didn't understand inner city children, the inner city challenge, and the inner city way of teaching, because it is different. Anyone disagree? You're so kind. And so what I was able to do as a head was share my best practice and that of the people in my school who's all been trained, who were all there because they were experts and learned stuff and could bring things to the team. That's the team that I brought around me. I always say to you, if you're a leader, make sure you bring someone who's better than you. Don't have an ego. Because that is why you do well. You never do nothing alone. And so that school, because it had to change, and it did, and it was painful, and it was difficult, and they had exclusions for the first time, and they had failure for the first time, but they had change for the first time. And I'm pleased to report that they have been successful because they really did embrace diversity in every sense of the word. Can anyone tell me what diversity means? Give me some words. What does diversity mean? Difference. Thank you. Difference. Okay. Anything else? Interesting. Okay. Interesting and different. Okay. There's some powerful words, but if we can be very specific, what we had is children who didn't represent the status quo in Liverpool. And the status quo in Liverpool for that school was white, middle-class children. And I'm going to tell you a little quick story. I sent my child there because I thought, and people think, she thought she was a black activist. Because I thought, he's going to do great in this school. And then next thing I knew, all children from the inner city come at the same time. My son had a fine time. because there was a big diverse population and it changed. I haven't got time to explore that more with you, but I hope you get the message. Is that helpful? Excellent. Okay. What I want you to do now is to use your own good brains. Have a little look at that picture, either by looking on your flyers or looking at the PowerPoint, and just have a read. And a laugh. Okay. Now, could you tell me what things, what attributes, what things, I won't say attributes, that's the wrong word, what things do you think you need as a good teacher, a good leader in education, to be able to engage communities in that respect?
Entrepreneurial skills.
Entrepreneurial skills, yeah.
A bit of magic.
A bit of magic, wow, yeah. Negotiation. Ability to listen. A sense of humour. Persuasion. Open mind.
Integrity.
Hope. Integrity. Empathy. Persistence. Excellent. Well, none of it was wrong. And you'll probably hear and notice that I don't tell people you're wrong. It usually works. It helps people to be right. Okay? And that's not a common trait in a teacher, I must say. Do we agree? What I can tell you is that there are 4 things that you need to do. Now, what I want you to do, I'm going to tell you the 4 things, and just tick them off in your mind if you qualify. The first thing is you need to be educated. I don't mean educated in the sense of formal education. I mean the education that's really outside. It's more about emotional literacy. And that is understanding about inclusion. And all those words that you just said, you need that type of education. Okay? If you've got it, tick it off. If you haven't, work on it. The second thing you need to be is travelled. And what I mean by that is if you've travelled beyond your little mining village or your little city called Liverpool, you qualify. If you've done that, you've qualified. The third thing you need is to have exposure to different cultures, different languages. If you've done that, I'm not going to embarrass people by asking them if you have. I don't do embarrassment. So third thing is, if you have done that, you qualify. So tick it off in your box. If you haven't, put it on your to-do list. And the fourth thing that you need is to have been discriminated at some point, either because of your gender, because of your disability, because of your sexuality, or because of your race. So if you have, tick that off in your box. If you engage with it more importantly and understand it and use it for the better, discrimination is a good experience for you. Okay? What I'm not trying to say to you is try and find someone to discriminate against you. So don't worry if you didn't qualify. Okay, moving on. Just to help you understand what it is I'm talking about, this is the template that I used when I was a leader. Now remember, I got many things wrong. I started off fairly young in my leadership role. In a way, I became a self-made head teacher, going through an independent school, setting up the first independent school in the country. Yes, I got appointed, but without trying to undermine it, of course, I was well qualified. As I always reminded my fellow heads, I've got more qualifications than you. Most of them didn't have a degree and I had a master's. I'm not very competitive, you will notice. But anyway, this is the template that I used. HMI said this about it, and I'll use the quotes loosely. If Elamu Academy was part of the local authority, it would be a source of pride for its joined up and inclusive practice. So if anybody embraces HMI or Ofsted who come in and inspected us and think that they're worthy of taking notice of, it's been endorsed by them. This is the very same template that I went around local authorities and schools using to build the idea of including communities. I'm going to quickly skim through what it means, and if anyone wants to ask me any questions, then please do. Obviously, the school is self-explanatory. As I've explained, in order to include communities, you need to start thinking outside the box and engaging with the private sector. I've given you an example of how I did it through Liverpool and Everton. That's a natural thing. If I was in Loughborough, I might go to the sporting side of things, because to me that's a natural partner in the private sector. In the public sector, I'm sure we can all come up with easy ideas because we're already engaged with them in the public sector. And in the third sector, you might have more of a challenge. But certainly in the third sector, I engaged the communities in terms of the business community and the local shops. And they came in and they taught the young people about different trades, because some young people had no aspiration. I'm sure you've met them along the way. They don't know what they're going to do. Why? Because they're in third and fourth generations of families that have had no one work. Or indeed, as went to my school, I had the range. I had a young person who had 9 A stars. And that was in the days when you didn't really get them. I'm not saying they're easy to get. But certainly for her, she came to my school not because she felt she needed to get extra work, because clearly she didn't. But it's inspiring for her to be able to see people who looked like her doing jobs that were not common. And the reason I can say that is, in Liverpool, for instance, there are only 3 head teachers, minority head teachers. And at the time in which I was teaching, out of a teaching staff of 5,500, how many teachers do you think we had? Any offers? Any maths people? 5,500 teachers. How many were minorities? 50. Going down? Any more offers? 25. Okay. There was 35. Anyone who's good at maths? And I was good enough just to get into the teaching profession. So I think that's good enough. It's very low. So there you go. So it's really important that you use your third sector. And then the communities. Who are they? Let me tell you something that's really important, and it works. When you're doing parents' evening, they're your communities. If you're not very ambitious and you think, wow, I'm going to engage communities by bringing the parents in, wow. If you want to start at the very bottom level, and that's okay, you've got to start somewhere and work upwards. Bring the parents in to tell them good news. That's why parents don't come to school. Because the teacher always moans. Use and create time to tell the parents good news. And use the parents' skills, because quite often you will be amazed, surprised or interested to learn that parents have many skills that they can come in with and help you in your daily teaching practice. So they're very important. That's just some of the ways. And of course, why do we do it? The only reason we exist, I think, and that's for young people, for children. We do it for them. And all of these people will impact on them, as they will the parents. And as I said, and as you learned from Karen, that we engage the parents by training them up to be classroom assistants. We did more than that. Because in Liverpool, as I told you before, if we only had 35 teachers from racial minority communities, I think we needed a few more. So what we did is we started them off at ground zero, classroom assistants, and many went on to become teachers. And some people accuse me of making the schools full of racial minorities in Liverpool. And some people accuse me of filling it up with learning mentors. We stand accused. We accept it. But they're the things that we did in the community. But it wasn't just minorities, and I have to stress that and overstress it for you, that it was people from all over. If there's anything that HMI said that was interesting, and I know we use this word a lot, whatever it means, about the school community, was that people come from every part of the world. So I had white, I had Asian, I had black, I had light brown, I had dark brown. You know, think about it. All the different communities. That's possible. And because we're the world in one city, Liverpool, of course we were able to do that. Okay? So is that all clear? Does that help people? Please use that as your template. Now, I know this is a big ask to do all of those things, and you think, oh yeah, all very well, Gloria, but how do you trust people? Trust is the foundation for everything you do. And so what I want you to do is go over that and think about, how do you engage all these people using your competencies as a leader, using your open communication, and making sure that your school isn't so formal that nobody benefits but you. Do you know the type of school I'm talking about? Where it's so strict, everybody's too scared to ask a question. Where it's so strict that people are so straight in lines that they're actually not thinking, they're just doing. They're the kinds of schools that you should be not creating, and the kinds of schools you should be creating are outside of those things. What I'm not going to do is waste a lot of time on that, but remind you that at the back of your information pack is loads of good practice ideas. Please interrogate it, use it as homework, and have a look at the links and information I gave you to help you thinking. Okay. Most of you said that roundabout when I asked the question. If you've got those 6 things, tick them off: trust, respect, autonomy, risk-taking, self-awareness, tolerance. If you've got them all, put your hands up. I have. If you've tested them all, put your hands up. I have. All of you have at some point or another tested them. They're the things that you're going to have to keep doing and keep testing if you really are going to involve your communities and engage them in your future practice. Our friend here asked me earlier on, you know, about challenges. There are many challenges and there are many opportunities. But what I would say is those 3 points in blue: teaching, learning, equity and excellence, engagement and extended schools, tick box. They're the things that you need to do. They're the 3 things. They're the 3 things that need to be the core of everything you do. Okay? And you think, gosh, I'm going to do it. That's too hard. I haven't got the time. I've got to do national curriculum planning, and I've got to do my sets, and I've got to do my marking, and I've got to do my homework, and then I've got to have staff meetings, blah, de, blah, de, blah, de, blah. Okay? So what I would say is there is a way to do it. You're not alone. This template is something that I've used as I've gone through the country, advising, working with, communicating with, cajoling, consulting, and all the other things that you do when you're trying to get people to get on board with you. If you use that template, if you're lucky enough to be part of the specialist schools academy or trust, then you can use that. I believe it's free. I've put the at the back of the back of the presentation the information there, so it's free to you. If you are not fortunate enough to be able to do that, then, like I said, if you just use that template, you can put that in as part of your planning. And I know you all plan, don't you, leaders? And you all put it in your policies, don't you, leaders? Yes, of course you do. So that's the kind of thing that should be part of your planning. And believe it or not, when Ofsted come along, they actually mark and judge us in that way. So it's something for you to score a point with if that's the only reason you do it, which I hope it isn't. And finally, to sum up, because I know time is of the essence, these are the things that you want to do These are the most crucial things. And again, tick them off. Check yourself. Test yourself. Your strategic focus, it's about you. It won't work unless you leaders do it, community. It's got to be mainstreamed. It's not something that's done on a Friday evening. It's not something that you think about at the weekend but never do on a Monday. It's something that happens every day in your school. How do you do it? I've explained some ideas about the action and the focus that you need to take. But these 3 things that I've put here in the little boxes, it's about shared. You all answered differently, and that's the sharing. That when you're working with your leaders, my good friend over there, and I didn't get his name, said, how do you get people on board? You share it. And you get the detractors on board by agreeing with them also. Might be a funny strategy, but I find it works. The other important thing is to really identify what is your status, what does community mean for your school, because I might have given you some examples and it may have resonated with you, or it may not have. I apologise for that. I haven't got enough time to cover every community possibility. But what I hope I have done is stimulated your mind to realise that it's up to you as leaders to identify your status. What is your status? What is your community? And finally, and I think over here, I heard about innovation. Schools are now businesses. The good old days, if they were, where schools never had to do anything. And we all sat there and the money came in. And we didn't really have to be that creative, maybe. And we certainly didn't have to be business-like. Schools are now becoming small businesses. And you as leaders have to become a little bit more business-like and learn the rules of business so that you can be true leaders. I do hope that this has been useful to you. I do hope that you will engage in this every day and you'll take this away and see how far you can travel with this. Thank you for listening.
Unfortunately, I don't think we have time for questions, but I'm sure, just as yesterday, Gloria would be available for questions that you may want to take to her during the break. Can I just thank you very much for sharing your adventures and challenges, engaging us in your presentation, equipping us for our Wuthering Heights scenario after lunch, and also inspiring us to work effectively with our local, national and global communities right now and as tomorrow's heads. Thank you.